We are on the line for our very first installment of the Coach's Corner with Coach Mike Resetar. Mike was the catcher at Mansfield University from 1993 to 1996, and for the past 20 years, he's been a math teacher at Southwestern Senior High School in Hanover, Pennsylvania, as well as the head varsity coach for the Southwestern Mustangs baseball team. Mike is also the president of the Southwest York Outlaws organization, where he coaches both baseball and fast pitch softball all the way from ages 8 to 18. Outside of coaching and teaching, Mike is also the owner of Arena Sports Baseball and Softball Academy. Mike, thanks for coming on.
How you doing? Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, we're doing great. We're pretty excited for this, and for those of you listening that may not know, I played for Mike for a short period of time, my freshman year in high school, and that actually was your first year coaching. So that's pretty cool.
It was, yes. Yes, it was.
How time
Long
flies.
time ago, Dan. Long time ago.
Yeah, and you were also my math teacher, and I did pass your class. So that's
Ask about when you played, Mike, back in, a couple years ago, I guess, when you used to play, and how your high school career went, and what ultimately led you to choose to go to Mansfield University.
Well, I was obviously I was a Southwestern graduate in 1992, and I had some success in high school, and I was on a travel team with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine now. His name's Mike Resetar, coaches an elite level showcase team, and I was one of the first teams Mike had, and I was actually Mike's first scholarship player. And we were traveling around, and we were kind of in the greater Harrisburg area, and we were playing a team up in Palmyra, and out of Palmyra. We were playing them in Hershey, and the Mansfield coach was up there watching this kid pitch from Palmyra, and I had a real good day off of him. Went 3 for 4 with 2 triples and a double, and the Mansfield coach, his name was Coach Teddy. He liked what he saw with how I swung the bat, and kind of asked if I was interested in Mansfield, and at that time I was. So it worked out. So had a couple different schools to go to, but Mansfield was good. They were the runner-up national champions the year before I got there. They lost to the University of Tampa in 1992, the College World Series. So it was exciting times. Their junior catcher was getting drafted that year. So for me, I had an opportunity to go in there to compete for a catching spot. And, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, the summer before my freshman year, a transfer kid came in from Florida State. He was only a sophomore, a catcher. So he ended up catching ahead of me for 3 years. But I learned a lot from him. And I was able to then get into starting lineup as a sophomore as a DH outfielder, and then kind of played the rest of my career there at Mansfield. So it was a good time. And that's the one thing that I learned so much of at Mansfield was just learn the knowledge of the game, because Coach Hilson, who is still the coach up there, really did a nice job of teaching the fundamentals. And he came in and kind of took the approach that nobody knew anything when they got there. So he went from step one right from the fall, teaching everything about base running and leads and stealing and throws and cutoffs, the whole 9 yards. He just taught everything. So It was an excellent education for me. So, and I do a lot of the same stuff we do today. So because of that, so it was a great opportunity. But I got to learn a lot. So the unfortunate part was I didn't get to play right away, but the fortunate part was I got to learn an awful lot.
Why did you essentially get into coaching right out of college?
After I graduated with my undergrad in math education, and I stayed an extra year, got my master's degree, and I was a grad assistant up there for that. So I helped out the following year. So I graduated in spring of '96. I stayed up there, and I helped out with the spring of '97 team. And then I came back home, and Phil Hempton, who was a good friend of mine, was the assistant superintendent at Southwestern, and I interviewed with him, and I got a long-term sub position as a 5th grade teacher, and then was offered the JV coaching position. So I took that, and that was good learning experience. And then the following year, the guy that was the head coach, he stepped down, and they offered me if I wanted to be the head coach. So just kind of stepped in there in 1999, my first year.
You've been doing this for quite a while, in a few years, and I mean, what going back and thinking. When you first got into it and trying to change culture and create a culture, what do you think is some of the biggest changes in the high school game from, those years in 1999 to now, in 2018 with the players, with the game itself, with all of it? What do you think are some of the biggest changes that you've seen?
In all honesty, the culture has changed a little bit. The biggest thing that I see with kids is there's a lot more things for kids to do, whether it's sports wise or, iPod wise, computer wise. So the work ethic of kids I have seen hasn't, and that's not all the cases, but in general, I don't see many kids just out playing baseball as much. So that, that certainly has takes its toll when they get to high school. There's a lot more that needs to take place, and especially if you've got a program where you're really trying to develop, it's going to take a little extra effort.
Right. What is the thing that you see most that is lacking in your players when they get to high school that they weren't taught when they were in Little League? And what are some of the consistent things that you're seeing?
Well, again, I don't know, about 10 years ago, you run into a situation where some kids play and they play on some of these travel teams. They go to these tournaments and they think they're good, they win and that kind of stuff, and then but they don't play really the good competition. So that was the whole stem of the starting the Outlaws program, really, was to try to put together, competitive travel teams and play against competition that's going to push the kids to get better.
Right.
Not just go play and go trophy hunting to try to just win tournaments, but to go play against good competition. So when they get into, games that are close, they're used to playing a higher level of competition. And the travel thing is probably, back to the previous question, is probably the biggest change that I see, aside from, that there's the thing that there's more stuff for kids to do. There are kids playing travel ball, which when I said before, there's not as many kids out playing. When I say that, I mean, they're not in their backyard playing.
Right.
Just throwing the ball around, taking,
Exactly.
Swinging, taking, hitting balls. It's more organized from that aspect. But at the same time, kids need to be out there. They just got to go play and have fun, because everything they're doing is kind of game situations. They're not just able to, throw the ball around and work on just different arm slots and, just to have fun. I mean, and play the game. And so they're lacking a little bit of that. But now with the travel stuff going on, kids are getting a lot more exposure in terms of the level of competition they're facing at a much sooner age. And my hope is with our Outlaws program, that'll start to pay dividends within the high school program, because now those kids will start to filter on in and have a little more success because they're used to a higher level of competition.
I think one thing that I think is lacking in culture is kids don't really listen to baseball on the radio. They don't sit down and really watch baseball on TV. They might see the highlights on SportsCenter, but they don't ingrain themselves into the game and the nuances of the things that are going on, and watching guys steal bases. And I don't know. What do you think about that, Mike? Because I really think that's something that's lacking in
I totally agree. The knowledge of baseball, the baseball IQ is not as high as what it used to be. And again, how that has to do with, kids can go home and play Fortnite for 4 hours a night. There's too many other things for them to do,
or make slime,
that are more entertaining and more fun. Because really, for a younger kid to sit and watch baseball, it is kind of boring unless you're sitting there with somebody who kind of knows what they're doing and kind of help walk you through games when things go on. But back 10, 15 years ago, or when I was a kid, and you guys are probably kids, there wasn't a whole lot of other stuff to do. I mean, Nintendo had just come out, but that wasn't much fun. So there wasn't a whole lot to do, and so you were forced to kind of, watch baseball on TV, or, go play pickle in your backyard, or whatever the case may be. And that stuff doesn't happen as much. It does in some areas, but just doesn't happen as often.
Remember, I just wondered if kids still did it. I used to stand in front of my TV while watching SportsCenter on repeat and swing my bat. And I would put myself mentally in those situations and swing my bat. Then I'd go out back and throw the ball against the wall and work on my reaction time on a ground ball and weird hops. And then we'd go play pickle or rundown, and that's kind of what you did.
Pepper. The game of Pepper is lost forever. A generation of the game lost.
Yep.
What do you make of, the pitching changes? I mean, the pitching limits in high school baseball. Do you think it's for the better? I mean, you've seen this all the way back from, you'd have 2 or 3 pitchers on your team, and that was all you pitched all season. I mean, what do you think? And it's very kind of new to some areas. Some areas have had the rules longer. I know it's been probably one of the biggest changes in high school baseball. What do you make of the change itself, Mike? Do you think it's for the better?
I do understand the concept behind it. Again, the problem becomes, you get these renegade coaches that just try to go win games. So I do understand what they're trying to do. There's always been pitching restrictions and mandatory days rest, but it was based on the number of innings that were thrown rather than the number of pitches that were thrown. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I don't know. I've not really seen it affect our particular game too often, the way we play. But again, I'm not one of the coaches in the past would just go throw a guy 150 pitches in a game either.
Right.
So I've always tried to care for the athlete's arm to make sure that they were healthy. Because again, ultimately, my goal, and I judge a little bit of my own success on the number of kids that can get pushed into college baseball. And, if you burn a kid's arm out, well, then that certainly limits his opportunities to be able to do some of that stuff. So again, as much as I want to win, as much as we try to win and how hard we play, I'm certainly not going to risk injury for kids. So the pitching seasons really haven't affected us and the way I coach, I don't think. But I do think it's affected other people. I understand the purpose of the rule. Do I think it's effective in saving kids' arms? I don't know. I don't think there's enough data out there that shows that if you only throw 100 pitches in a game that you're not going to get arm injuries. I think a lot of the arm injuries come because these kids go to more of these showcase type tournaments and they're out there chasing the number because obviously for pro guys, they're trying to see the kids throwing in the 90s. And so kids are just out there reaching back and throwing it as hard as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And for a 16-year-old kid, it's not natural for his arm to be able to throw that hard. So obviously now you're going to get tears and strains that you normally don't get because your arm shouldn't be throwing that hard. I mean, it needs to be more fully developed before that should happen. These kids that want to play baseball and they're on 4 different teams and they're pitching for team 1 and then they're throwing 2 days later for team 2 and then they come back and throw 3 days later for team 3 and then they go back and pitch for team 1 again and they're just not getting the rest. Honestly, that's where parenting has to come in, and I think parents need to find a place for the kid to play it. I definitely think kids need to be playing multiple sports because it teaches the competitive nature, teaches athleticism that they don't necessarily get. There's a lot of skills involved in basketball and wrestling and swimming and football that baseball doesn't give them in terms of just functional movement. And so kids need some of that in addition to the competitive stuff because, football is pretty intense. Basketball, a lot of pressure on the foul line. Baseball, there's a lot of downtime. It's not as an active sport. So again, I think those multi-sport athletes benefit a baseball player. But I do think the pitching thing has certainly some of that has come to bear that high school coaches are facing the consequences of what these kids or what these travel teams are doing because they're just out there shopping arms.
What is one of the differences between coaching baseball and coaching softball?
The softball game is a lot faster. Obviously, the field size is smaller. The game itself, in terms of the quickness, rather than taking 4.5 seconds, 5 seconds to get a kid down the line. In high school, you're talking 2.75 to 3.25 seconds to get down the line in softball. The pitching distance is a third closer. They're throwing from 43 feet from 60 feet. So the game itself is faster, but for me, the mechanical part of it, the knowledge part of it, the situational part of it, I don't take a different approach in how I teach it. That's all the same.
What would be, in your mind, one of the most important drills that a young kid could do offensively, and what's an important drill that a kid could do defensively for the dad out there who, whose kid's getting into it? What is the one thing where dad should start at from the very beginning with his son or daughter and go with? You know what I mean?
From an offensive side of things, just being able to get into a good hitting stance and being able to kind of just again, a lot of kids are just all off balance. Their bodies lean in different directions. If you start with proper form with your footwork up to your hips, up to your chest, where everything kind of is in line, I think that's a good reference. When I'm doing lessons with kids, that's the very first thing I look at. If I have a kid who, is leaning way too much on his backside or getting way out on the front side, we try to balance everything out offensively. Defensively, again, if you break it down to just the basic fundamentals of fielding mechanics, learning where your glove position should be, learning how your feet should be as you approach the ball. You get a lot of kids that just kind of get clumsy when they approach the ball. They don't know how to get to it, with any kind of smoothness. And so, just teaching the basic fundamentals of how to feel the ball with your hands out in front, those types of things I think are extremely important. And that's how we start with our 11-year-old kids. Well, we started when they were 8, 9, and now a lot of them have, now it's just second nature. We still have a few kids that haven't caught on yet, but again, we continue to harp on it. So those are two huge things. Just kind of get the basic footwork. And then as they get older, kids will start to develop their own style and their own, little things that they can tweak on their own, to develop their own uniqueness to the game. But there is a core set of fundamentals that need to be in place in order to be able to play at a high level.
So we have a submitted question from Nikki Bull on Facebook. She wanted to know, what approach do you take when one of your players is struggling with thinking too much?
I just had that happen today. We had a game. We didn't play well, and the kid texts me and says, "Hey, what do I need to do?" And I pulled the old Aaron Rodgers card out. I spelled out RELAX, relax. This is a game where, as a coach, I want to teach, I want to instruct, I want to help. Okay, but at the same time, you can't fill your mind with too much, because the game happens so fast. Mm-hmm. And if your mind isn't right, you're not going to be able to play the game. You've got to trust that your training, that your practice has gotten you to a certain level that you're going to be able to perform. If your skills aren't there yet, well then that changes. But if you got a kid who has the skills to perform at their certain age group, they've got to just relax and play the game, because you're not going to be able to change things too drastically on the fly.
Yeah.
There's certain things you can change that you can tell a kid, hey, try this, try that, and they can adjust. But wholesale changes, those don't happen in game situations. So, kids have to relax, play, have fun. And then with that, got to understand this game's a game of failure. You're going to fail a lot, and you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. And so you've got to be mentally tough, and you've got to be able to accept that and understand that, hey, it's okay to fail and not be afraid to fail. And if kids can do that, and the sooner they learn that it's okay, and I just have to continue to work hard, you'll certainly find kids having more success.